Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're a couple minutes late getting started, but we've got four games on display this draw. Hello, hello. The U.S. is playing Korea on it's a very chilly day here where I live, at least. So hope everyone is enjoying the action. We just started the first end. I'm going to bring up the standings real quick so that we can talk a little bit about what's going on here. Right now, we've got Great Britain beat the U.S. this morning. The U.S. had their first loss. They're looking to bounce back here. Great Britain at 7-0 has clinched a playoff spot. They will be in the middle rounds. The U.S. still in really good shape, especially if they win this one, which you'd expect them to, as South Korea is the only winless team so far. But you never know. These games have all been pretty competitive. Canada and Italy are the only other teams with two losses, so they have the other playoff spots right now. But Canada playing Estonia, Italy in a huge game playing Norway. If either team should lose their game, we're going to have a very tight playoff race heading into the final few draws. So, welcome in if you're watching. Let me know what games you're interested in, what you think's going to happen in this draw, and let's settle in and watch some curling together. Here, I'm going to just adjust a little bit there. I am wearing my, can't really see, Young Bucks sweatshirt in support of Team Dropkin here. If you're new to curling, no worries. I'm going to pull up the strategy board so that we can talk about things, explain what's going on. Especially when it pertains to doubles, because I know for some people who, especially who don't watch much curling, doubles is a little different. If you've only watched it once or twice, watched regular curling once or twice, doubles works a little differently. And even if you're an experienced curler who's never played doubles, you may not really know the ins and outs. So let me see if I have that board ready to go just for the future. We have a strategy board, but yeah, I'll get that set up to where it looks better. But we can definitely use that later. Okay. All right, let's check in, see how the first end's going for the U.S. We haven't really talked any of the curling yet. Korea looked to slice their rock in there, just didn't quite get enough of it. Got pretty much sideways action. They were looking to kick it into the pile there. Yeah, good first end, actually, before that shot, setting up for Korea here. U.S. Was struggling with the rocks this morning. I guess this afternoon in Italy. But in the game that was on around 8:30 a.m. here on the East Coast in the U.S., was struggling with the rocks a little bit. The rocks were scratched again before today's games. For those who don't know, when you scratch the rocks, you're going to add some more curl to them. Although in this case, it seems like the work they did combined with the rocks and the ice actually straightened them out, especially on some paths. What it sounded like the U.S. team, or maybe the curlers in general, are happy with, though, is that the ice was a bit quicker. So it was a little straighter, but definitely quicker. And of course, that might take a little time for everyone to figure out exactly how that works on different lines on each sheet with different rocks. That can keep you guessing a little bit early on. So Corey Tisi trying to throw a rock in here. Just guarding, I guess. Okay. I don't have the audio on, of course, while I'm doing this. Yeah, just guarding that same shot that Korea tried last time. looks like the U.S. is fine with giving up one here. There was no real good opportunity for a steal, so we'll see if Korea can come up with something to get a deuce, or if they're just going to take their one here. Generally, in curling with the hammer, including in mixed doubles, you're, generally trying to get multiples with the hammer. So let me set up that strategy board so that it looks a little better. And Korea is trying a final shot here. Trying to run yellow, red. Oh! Made it real close. Definitely got one. Very nice shot. I think the yellow at the bottom of the house is second shot. I think it's just one Korea, but we'll see. As I work on this, try to give you guys a good view of the strategy board. And that should be sufficient. We throw that in there. Yeah, that looks better. All right, so if we want to talk, I'll shrink it a little, actually, so that it looks a little better. That's pretty good. Okay, so if we need to talk about strategy or anything, we can. So end of the first end should be Korea 1, US nothing. Yes, Korea did take one there. Okay. So typically, I like to say that taking one with a hammer, and kind of true with doubles as well, is the default, sort of the neutral result. Neither side's going to be too upset with that. Doesn't change the odds of the game much. The team with hammer is expected to score, but one is obviously the minimum. In doubles, if there are a bit more multiples scored, but there are also more steals. So on balance, a one is still probably about that same level of, you're okay with it. Nobody's really accomplished anything in the end towards winning or losing, unless one team's pretty far ahead. If one team gets pretty far ahead, a one with hammer helps the team that's ahead, regardless of who does it, because it kind of just runs time off the clock, right? So uh, if you look at the scoreboards behind there and you see their clocks ticking down, that is thinking time. After the other team shot has come to rest and they kind of exit the playing field so that you have room to throw, your time starts. Once you've thrown your rock, which to do that, once you've slid out and crossed the center of the house, your rock is officially in play, your time stops. So it's thinking time, not total time. And that basically determines how long you have to consider your shots, get ready, set up throughout the whole game. Each team does also get a timeout where they can call a coach and stop the clock for about a minute and a half, depending on the travel time that they've allotted for the coaches. In doubles, you have obviously 2-on-2. You have one male, one female player on each team. For most of these teams, including both of these teams playing this game in the Korea USA game, uh, you'll see the woman throwing the 1 and 5 rocks. They're only throwing 2. They are tending to throw the most important rocks. The male player throws the middle 3, typically 2, 3, 4. That is not set in stone. Either player can take either of those roles, and you can even switch between ends, which I think a lot of people may not know. You'll very rarely see that. I have seen it at competitive play, usually only on the power play, which we'll talk about more when that comes up in the game, which it probably will. Um, in some cases, the better draw, if the woman is the better drawer, or the person who normally plays 1-5 is the better drawer, and a team needs to score a bunch at the power play, they may let that player throw 2, 3, 4, even if they've normally been throwing 1-5. But typically, you won't see too many changes during the match. All right, U.S. Corey Dropkin dropping one right there on the button, a little deep. He probably would have preferred that either to get slightly over where it'd be harder to remove, or have it top button. Um, they've created what you kind of would call a pocket here. If we pull up the board. Um, the 2 Yellowstones without worrying about anything else in play. Kind of sitting like this. It allows the other team to throw a rock anywhere in there. You can hit them hard and remove both, or you can even just sit in there, and it's very difficult to remove the red rock because your own rocks are providing backing there. And sure enough, they make a little hit there, and a little tap, really. Not even a full hit. Korea now sitting 1 on the top of the button. The U.S. team, Corey TC, Corey Dropkin, won Worlds 3 years ago. Have pretty much played like the best team in the world on tour this year. So outside of Italy, who had come into the Winter Olympics with a bit of mystique, not only because they're playing at home, but because the Italian duo had only played in they played the Olympics 4 years ago. One went undefeated. Then they played. They didn't play again. They don't play on tour together in doubles, and they went on to win Worlds in their only really warm up for this Olympics last year, undefeated. So they had not lost a game. They've now lost 2 in the round robin. So they came in, especially when you talk to if you looked at like sports books, online betting sites, they were the clear favorites. But I think for people who really knew curling, while that made some sense, it was also, there was a feeling of, how much have we really seen them play? Some of these other teams are really good. Corey and Corey, the Great Britain team, the Canadian team, were all also favorites, and those are your top 4 right now. Going right now would be in the playoffs. So, which is part of the reason why this is such a important game for the U.S. Dropping that game earlier to one of the other favorites. If they can win out against the remaining teams, none of whom are Italy is the only one, I should say, of that top group. They have not yet played. They should have no issues making the playoffs. But that does mean you have to win these games. And right now, Korea is sitting two, well guarded. There are angle raises in, which is what Corey Dropkin was just pointing to. So I'm assuming that's what they're about to throw. Obviously, can't show the games here for anyone who jumped in. You're not going to see the game live here. I just wanted to have a little bit of a watching party, so to speak, so that we can talk curling. If you're new to curling, you have questions, feel free to ask them in chat. I can kind of guide you through what's going on. And we'll talk strategy, and we'll talk about what's going on around all four games as we progress here. Second end right now, Korea's up 1-0 on the U.S. So yeah, Corey Dropkin's going to try to angle raise this in. I don't know if you can get rid of both of those red stones for Korea. You can definitely get rid of one and sit second shot, which could set up potentially a bigger end for the U.S. here. The U.S. really needs to make sure they don't give up a multiple. We don't want to fall behind, and they got exactly what they were hoping for there. Korea is still pretty much on the pin, sitting one. The U.S. is second and third, though, so Korea is going to have to protect this, and the U.S. will have something likely to score, and worst case, give up another one, keep the hammer only down 2 early. Still plenty of time to come back. Yeah, very nice shot. And the important thing there is to stick it so that you are second shot and you're threatening a big end here. If Korea were not to throw or makes a poor shot here, you are giving the U.S. the chance to play a soft, come down to that yellow-red, and just tap the red out, sit 3. Korea is throwing the guard, throws it well. There's really nothing on that side. So it'll be interesting to see what the U.S. thinks they can throw. I said there's no draw on the other side of the ice. But you might be able to come soft down and play like a red-yellow tap for 1, maybe 2. If you can slice that red that's in the top 8 across the top of the yellow, maybe you can get 2. Doesn't look easy. Corey Dropkin does not look happy about what's available there. Yeah, that's pretty tough. Maybe it's a red into the yellow. That looks possible. And there's really not much danger because that yellow is locked in there. And you are also third shot. There's no way you're getting rid of that yellow without also losing the red behind it. So that's what Corey TC's trying here. Looks like a double run. It's red into the pile. It's close. Oh, just missed touching the yellow. Good throw. It will be 1 red, though. It's 2-0 South Korea looking for the upset here. I'm just going to pull out to multi-view for a second on my TV and see what we have going on in the other games. If there's any interesting early scores while we wait for the U.S. and Korea to jump into the third end. Wow, I did not see that. Estonia has jumped out to a 5-0 lead over Canada. Oh, tough one. I mean, the thing about Estonia, and people who follow curling just a little will be like, well, Estonia's not really a curling nation. True, but their mixed doubles team has won silver at Worlds in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, won silver. Last year won. Finished 4th. Very competitive on tour and at Worlds. So they're definitely capable of beating some of the best teams in the world. But that would throw a wrench into the round robin standings for sure if Estonia can get a win against Canada here. And at 5-0 after 2, there's a very good chance they do. That's a big lead, especially with a strong team. Norway's up 2-1 on Italy. Another game that could really really start to play with the standings here in the round robin, because if you gave Italy and Canada a third loss each, there would suddenly be a bunch of teams right in the mix for for the playoffs, with only really, and Great Britain's already in. And if the U.S. wins this game, and especially if everyone else has 3 losses, you'd assume the U.S. has an excellent chance of getting in. But yeah, if we have losses from what looks likely to be a loss from Canada, and then Italy is in a tough game early, down by one without Hammer, so Norway's off to a good start in that game. We really could have an exciting last couple days, where every game may have playoff implications, just about. All right, Korea gets off to a good start again, getting that freeze on the back rock. Um, I talked about this a bit yesterday for anyone who might be watching and curious. Um, whoops. Sorry, guys. That should do it. Yeah, there we go. All right, so um, generally speaking, if you see if the non-hammer team comes all the way down for the dead freeze, or on either side of that, that's likely to limit how much the hammer team can score. Not necessarily great for stealing, but it's an attempt to kind of control the scoring area, make it so you can only score right near the button. If you see them instead get up here, that's probably better to steal, because you've gotten behind the guard and you're controlling, the pin basically. It's pretty tough to get rid of this rock effectively. You might even see it as high as top 4. But leaves more scoring area. It's easier to chip out. At some point, obviously, the non-hammer team needs to get in this area, usually to steal. But the most common sort of all-around shot is you'll see, didn't need to bump. Usually, they don't want to bump. Just come down to that back rock. Sometimes you'll see up here, especially if they're trying to set up a steal. So yeah, 2-0 Korea. What else? Yeah, like I said, the other games. It's the Estonia Canada game is the most surprising one. Not because Estonia was not going to have a chance to win that game, but because a 5-0 lead after 2 ends for Estonia was not what I was expecting. And Estonia again actually has control of the pin there, and looking to guard and has backing. So the U.S. has some interesting angles set up here early in this end. I think they wanted to get more to nose. There is still some backing there. Now it's yellow sitting 1 with the Koreans sitting second and third. No, maybe, yep, second and third. I think U.S. fourth and fifth. Keeping a lot of rocks in play always means you have a good chance of scoring a multiple, or at least have a threat of scoring a multiple. Obviously, rocks that are not in play or are clearly never going to outcount anything are not a factor. But in this case, it's still too early to say what rocks will matter, especially with all those rocks lined up near the forefoot. This looks light. Unless Korea was trying to guard, but I don't think they were. Now it's getting there. Okay, not a terrible spot for. Actually, ended up being a pretty good spot. It's like I was pretty sure they did not want to throw some sort of high guard, but they might have been happy with that. That might have been the idea. They also might have really just wanted to come down to the pile again. When you see teams stacking rocks like that, red, yellow, often both teams are looking for the best opportunity to set up angles where they can remove one or more of the other team's shots while keeping theirs around afterwards. And that doesn't mean they're immediately going to hit, but it does set up a situation where either you're setting up angles that are good for you so that you can hit, or setting up angles that dissuade your opponent from hitting because they're more likely to make the situation better for you, because their rocks will either go um, leave the house or become much more vulnerable by removing the backing if they were the ones to hit first. So another draw down there. They look a little frustrated today, Corey and Corey. Just a little bit. And they did talk about the rocks were kind of new to them. The ice had changed more than they expected. But just not quite as sharp in the two games today. Just not to say they're playing badly by any stretch, because they gave Great Britain a very good game even after getting out to a slow start. I absolutely expect them to come back here um, at some point and pick up a couple good ends. It would be shocking if they didn't at some point. Yeah, what a mess of a house. You watch doubles, you're going to see a lot of houses that end up with a lot of rocks in and around the 4 foot. It's just the nature of the game. Hello there, Ducky. Looks like you're rooting for Korea. They are playing super well to start the game. Made a lot of made shots. Hope it'll be great to see them get their first win. I, as an American, don't necessarily want it to be now, but it would be awesome. And they're a very good team. They've played well on tour. They've played well, against other top teams at Worlds. They're not. This isn't a bad team by any stretch, and it's just unfortunate they haven't been able to pick up a win yet. And outside of the U.S. Korea game, yeah, still keeping an eye on that Canada Estonia game, because it looks very likely that Estonia might just steal one here and go up 6-0 after 3 ends, which is wild. All right, Corey Dropkin coming in. Looking to sit two. This is hanging out there a little big. Hmm, that's just a miss. Just a straight miss for Corey there. Unfortunately, just heavy on that. And like I said, they're just not quite as sharp as they were the first few days. Not one more miss or half miss an end, and in doubles, especially with only 5 rocks, that's a big difference. Uh, because they came into today with by far the highest shooting percentage of any team. Corey TC had been the highest shooting percentage overall of any player. Um, but those numbers are coming down in a way, though. You'd say they almost inevitably would. I think they just were. You don't want them to come down, of course, and to have them come down maybe more rapidly than you expect, rather than having good but not quite as spectacular games. They struggled this morning, or in the earlier game today, I should say, and they are struggling just a little bit in this one too. It's going to be very hard to get to. You can definitely get there. Um, you're not going to mess with any of the rocks. That guard made it a lot harder to draw. Um, be interesting to see how much curl they think they can get here, or if they have to throw it with a lot of spin. When does it start? It should be. Am I not streaming now? That would be a problem. I believe I'm streaming now. Games are on right now on Peacock. So you can watch the curling right now. I do not have connections to actually stream doubles games. But Peacock, CBC has it in Canada. Elsewhere, I do not know who carries your local coverage of the Olympics. But so we're watching along, but we are not live streaming here. If that's what you're wondering, uh, could not get away with that, unfortunately. Estonia now up 6-0 on Canada. U.S. decided against that very difficult draw. Tried to play a big run, a double for two. Didn't quite make it. They'll take their one. It's a 2-1 game after three. Korea in good shape, though, up 2-1 with the hammer. Playing well and perhaps playing their best game of the tournament so far. Switzerland beating the Czech Republic, as you might expect. Corey Dropkin asking the crowd to get into it, pumping up the U.S. fans there in the crowd. I didn't catch what happened in the Norway-Italy game in the third end. Norway took one, so 3-1 Norway over Italy. Again, Canada, unfortunately, at this point, looks very likely to lose this game. You're down 6-0 after three ends against a very strong team. They're already taking their power play. If some of you that are watching this are not curlers, we can do a quick review of what the power play is. I've been doing that every draw, and it seems to be helpful for people. So let me pull up the strategy board. So in a normal doubles end, as we've been watching, if you've been watching these games, the hammer team starts with this rock at the back of the button, or the back of the forefoot. Sorry, not the back of the button. And there's a guard for the non-hammer team, and they're set up on the center line. The hammer team's rock is behind the tee line, so not ideal. And the non-hammer team gets a center guard, which is ideal for them. Sets up an end where a lot of the play, especially if the non-hammer team makes a shot, the hammer team maybe comes around and bumps things a little bit or whatever. But you're going to set up an end where all the play tends to be in this 4-foot circle, in the red circle here, the 4-foot. Call that because it's 4 feet in diameter. When you take the power play, though, which you can only do once per game, each team gets one power play that they can play with the hammer. And when you do that, you move the rocks to the side of the house. The hammer team's rock comes in front of the tee line and bisects this 12-foot and 8-foot circle, the outer two circles. And the non-hammer team has their guard move to the corner to protect that rock. Why is that good for the hammer team? Well, the hammer team, if it had its choice in 4-player curling and 2-player curling, would keep the house as wide open as possible so there's as much room to score in. You want to keep the scoring area as large as possible. In other words, as soon as you do this, you have increased the chances of a multiple score for the hammer team. It also helps their rock is in front of the tee line, so it's harder to freeze to it. It's harder to just sit on it and out count it. Also, by taking the play away from the center, even if you don't set up a situation where you're likely to score, it's a lot harder for the non-hammer team to steal. Generally, especially at a high-level play, in order to get a steal, you really need to get a center guard and something behind it, usually in front of the tee line and close to the button. Obviously, with only 5 rocks in mixed doubles and with the play kind of thrown to the corner by the power play, there's not a lot of time to do that. If a team is losing against the power play, they still will try to set up that steal, but it's much more difficult than in 4-player curling where you have 8 rocks to work with. So yeah, you'll see the power play used 2 ways. Like Canada right now is using it offensively, trying to set up an end where they can get a bunch of points and get back in the game. Whereas you'll sometimes see teams with the lead late use it defensively just to make sure they don't give up a steal, be very certain they can score, take an end off the clock, and move towards a win. right now Canada's got a lot of rocks in play with their power play, so they could potentially put up a fairly big end here and get themselves back into things. Canada set up around. Looking at Canada's game, and geez, Korea's setting up another good end with the U.S. Two U.S. rocks are in the back of the forefoot. Korea sitting two, in front of them. Yeah, this game is not shaped up well for the U.S. so far. Far from over. It's just the Koreans are playing very well. Corey and Corey struggling just a little bit. And Canada calling their timeout. We can take a quick look at kind of the situation for Canada and Canada. So Canada have lost their Estonia has moved their corner guard, but right now you have a setup kind of like this, where the three red rocks are the Canadian rocks, maybe more like that and that. So Canada could. These two are almost frozen. Canada considering just hitting and bumping this one into the yellow, removing the yellow, and you're going to sit 3 or 4. The only problem is you probably leave a double or more back. If you do that, this guard's not in the way. This would be the red rock they're throwing. If you do that, you may end up only, like I say, only getting 2 or 3, but given the scoreboard, you're kind of limiting your potential probably to 2 or 3 because Estonia will probably be able to get rid of 2 rocks. Whatever you do here, when you hit and bump, yeah, they won't both go. The bumping, you'd be in a situation like this, but either you're going to have a double back here. If these two aren't perfectly lined up, you can double them. If you depending on how these 2 rocks end up, you might be able to get these 2. There's gonna be a lot of ways to get at least 2 out, and Canada gets 3. That's great, but now they're still down 3 without hammer, having already used their power play. The other option is to throw one like in here. Then the only risk is that Estonia just throws one over here, and again, you're kind of being limited in how much you can score, or Estonia kind of hits and rolls away. That may limit you to 2. So it's not Canada in great shape to score here. I think they're trying to find a way to set up potentially a huge end where they can get right back in the game. So, but in the game I'm following most closely, Korea, yeah, up 2-1, sitting 1, surrounded by U.S. stones now. So the U.S. is sitting 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, which is not a bad place to be without hammer. No risk of giving up a big end here for the Americans. But Korea's sitting 1. And certainly still potential to get a deuce if you make a couple good shots here. So Canada did throw a 4th one in. It came up. It's not a counter. And Caldvey and Lil, the Estonian team, calling their timeout. Thinking about playing a run just to get rid of a couple Canadian rocks, but I'd really consider just, man, yeah. You come in there somewhere. How do you get rid of both Estonian rocks? All right, Korea did not get what they wanted out of their shot. they got rid of a couple of the U.S. rocks, but didn't stick theirs around at all. So now it's U.S. sitting second and third, and just with a shot to make Korea throw against 3 if they can remove this one on the button. We'll see if the U.S. can get in there. Interesting. Unclear exactly what Estonia is throwing here against Canada. Again, they're up 6. They don't want to give up 5 here. But you can kind of throw anything into that pocket where all the stones are, and you won't be able to get rid of it. U.S. just with an open hit. They sit 3. Sit 3. Looks like there's a very makeable hit for 1 for Korea. But certainly holding Korea to 1 here was what the U.S. had to do at a minimum, being down 2-1 early. So not a bad end at all. Worked out pretty well for Corey and Corey here. Estonia, maybe. Oh, Estonia probably did enough. There is a run, thin double, and of course Canada's going for that down 6 because why wouldn't you? There is a shot for 5. It just rolled off a bit too much there. It's almost on the nose too. You just nose that red and you make a run double for 4 or 5. Korea did get their hit for 1. Yeah, this is their. I mean, Estonia. Like I said, there were so many places you could put a rock for Estonia that would be outstanding. Uh, 1 spots. Any thoughts on the Great Britain USA match? The U.S. team. I mean, Corey TC and Corey Dropkin were clearly struggling with the rocks a bit early. Played well to stay around. Oh, dead nose. That's not too bad for Canada. They got 2. It's only bad because they're down 6-0. Makes it 6-2. Hung around. Great Britain did something again that I saw them do against the Czech Republic, which has surprised me. That again almost cost them late in the game, which I thought was interesting. In the 6th end of a tie game, they chose not to use their power play yet. They got forced to 1. The U.S. failed to score in the 7th, but only gave up a steal of 1. So the U.S. was able to had hammer and 8 down 2. And for a while, looked like I think Corey Dropkin had a very difficult shot, but he had a triple that would have definitely put a 2 or 3 back in play. Which, all that to say, that Great Britain never got to use their power play and easily could have lost without using their power play, which is something you don't want to do, given how useful it is to either score or play defense with it. They did that against the Czech Republic too. The Czech Republic, they were in the same spot, didn't use the power play, got 2. Czech Republic gave up a steal of 1. And then the Czech Republic was sitting 4 going into the last rocks in that game and could have easily just won it outright, other than the fact that they kind of rushed their last couple shots. Didn't end up able to get their 3 or 4. And in that spot, my bigger issue is that not that you're likely to lose in 8, but if the U.S. takes 2 there, now you're playing 9 with hammer, but with you can't use the power play because you cannot use the power play in the extra end. So interesting. You do want to save it so that for a situation where you know exactly what you want to do with the power play, but when you don't use it in 6 in a tie game, you definitely risk not getting it back, and there's a chance you cannot get it back, and just by losing the game, especially if you get forced in 6. But overall, I mean, Great Britain, Dodds Moat still look great. They've played great all week, except maybe that Czech Republic game, which they still won, the Czechia game, I should say. They obviously have already clinched a playoff spot. Should probably be the favorite to win gold now, for the moment at least, given the way they've been playing and the fact that we already know they're in. But yeah, so far, it was probably the worst game for the U.S. team. Not that they played super poorly, just that they were struggling with the ice changing. The conditions were a little different, um, and so there were a few more misses, especially for, as I say, Boy Corey, than we've seen earlier in the weekend. And I'm not sure yet if that's carried over here into the Korea game because they don't look quite as sharp as they looked earlier in the week, but I haven't seen as many complete misses as in the earlier game today. But even in that game, they got better. There were periods where they played well. They had a couple good ends in the middle of the game. They certainly haven't played badly. Um, and obviously, it's more they were playing outstanding heading into today in their first 4 games. So Switzerland's still up on the Czech Republic. Estonia, obviously, we said up 6-2 at the break after the fourth end. Korea's up 3-1 on the U.S. at the fourth end break. So there is a 5-minute break between the first and second half of the game after the fourth end. So that's why the action has stopped for a minute here if you're watching at home or you're wondering why I haven't mentioned a shot in a while. So 3 of the 4 games still very competitive. The Estonia game with Canada. Canada is in some trouble here. I guess while we're waiting, can I run I can insert an ad, right? Boop. I'm going to insert an ad. We got a minute. Cool. Ad inserted. All right, we're settling in for the 5th ends now. U.S. has the hammer down 2. Not where they wanted to be or expected to be going into this game, but still anyone's game. This close, this low scoring halfway through the game. Italy did get a deuce in 4-2, so they are tied with Sweden in a huge game over there on that sheet. Estonia beating Canada is a big, big result. Yeah, so a lot of these games very important. Honestly, if the U.S. goes on to lose this game, that's a huge result because then suddenly out of nowhere the U.S. has 2 losses and is right in the thick of the playoff race instead of right now where they're a bit kind of above. Sorry, Italy playing Norway, not Sweden. My mistake. So we got to keep an eye on that one too. As Stefania Constantini goes pretty deep on that first rock. U.S. also heavy. You've probably heard this if you've seen I talk about a lot at the Scotties and Briar. They do mop during the fourth end break, and sometimes the ice is a little quicker. And sometimes, depending on how much it quickens up, it can catch the players by surprise. So, as I'm watching 2 different games at once, maybe not super surprising to see that they've gone deep on a couple different sheets to start the end. And Korea also heavy on their shot. So yeah, I have a feeling the ice just quickened up a little bit after the break. Now is a good pocket for the U.S. to use, though. There are 2 stones right behind the T line, a U.S. and Korean stone. So the U.S. can sit on top of those and then potentially throw a hit later without losing their rock. So how are the changes in the ice affecting it? From what I heard, and it kind of shows, there is a bit more curl. The players were saying that the ice was a little straight. Sorry, excuse me. It's a little quicker in general today. The ice is a little faster because they were saying it was a little slow. They had a pretty standard 4-ish, a little more than 4 feet of curl. There are lines where it's been a little straighter, but it has been faster. Overall, I would guess the players, and they adjust to that, would prefer that. Ideally, you have both speed and a large amount of curl, not excessive, but somewhere between like 4 to 5, 5.5 feet maybe. But speed can be even more frustrating. And to be honest, it looks like the curls picked up again this draw. Last draw, it looked like it was running straighter, and the players were making comments about how they just weren't getting curl on certain lines. It does look like the curls kind of come back. Hopefully the speed is good again, because they were saying it was definitely slow the first couple days. And, even for players at this level, it is a little bit of an adjustment period. Hopefully by their second game, they're going to feel pretty confident with what the ice is doing and how they need to throw the rocks. Yes, the rocks were papered today. Yeah. Yeah, they were papered, and this morning in Italy before the games, or maybe last night. So yeah, which I think is part of why they were surprised there was less curl, because generally papering the rocks will get you a lot more late action. So I think changes to the ice as well are what maybe lost. They got the speed up and lost some curl due to changes on the ice, not due to the papering. All right, busy house here in the U.S. Korea game. Looking pretty solid for the U.S. right now, although that last stone by Korea will limit what damage the Americans can do here, because that stone is very usable. If the U.S. ever tries to make a play where they throw some weight and get rid of some of the other Korean stones, the Korea will always have that one they can run back, because it's not going anywhere right now. U.S. sitting 1 for the moment. I think just 1. And Korea's second. Hard to. They took a second look at it, so it might be fairly close. I found it interesting that also these rocks, I heard them say this morning, these rocks for mixed doubles are a different set. It does make sense they're doing a different set for this and men's and women's, because some people are playing both, and it would be an advantage to play the mixed doubles if you could get time and learn all the rocks, and then jump in and suddenly, like, if you're on a team that has someone who knows the rocks from mixed doubles, early on at least you'd have a small advantage, maybe to a moderate advantage, depending on if there are any really funky rocks that you need to know about, over the other teams. But I was surprised these are brand new rocks. The rocks that are being used for men's and women's, and this is fairly typical, but the rocks that are being used for men's and women's have been used in competition already this year. So the U.S. is 1 and probably 4th. Korea's got 4 stones in the forefoot, so those ones in the back for the U.S. are never getting back into play. There's no way you can ever get rid of, particularly the back Korean one. You could never get rid of anyway without jamming on the back ones anyway. The one Korea just threw is straight in a pocket on top of the 2 American stones that are the potential later counters. I actually think the one on the outside of the button is not even a potential counter now, if you're watching, because you're just never bringing it back into play, because you got to get rid of the rock in front of it. And the only way to do that is to also lose that rock. So U.S. may well get forced here. This is a really rough. Yeah, they're guarding. They might. You never know. They could try something on their last, but they're guarding. Over curled a little, but it should be perfectly fine. I don't really think it makes sense for Korea to try to slice in their red, because that yellow doesn't go very far. You might just make it easier for the U.S. to. You might just make it easier for the U.S. to find a deuce. So my prediction, I think this end is already all but settled. U.S. will get one. Um, there may be some things they can try. I mean, if Korea were just like to not throw a rock here, um, from the perspective of the players throwing on the right side of the ice, you might be able to sneak something in off that red Korean rock, thrown really down weight. Korea is most likely just trying to guard that now. Oh, maybe coming a little deeper than they wanted, but doesn't matter. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, I see no way for the. Yep, and Corey Tisi just runs right out, throwing sort of a practice stone. We'd say they're throwing the rock away, which they are, but good tip for everyone. When you're just throwing a rock away, always good to find a line you want to learn something about and throw a rock at a real weight in a real way, make a good throw, and see what the ice is doing. Estonia just blasted a few rocks to end up sitting one. They're happy to take their one there in the fifth, make it 7-2. Um, the Italy Norway game is down to skipped rocks in the fifth end. Let's take a look at that house. Norway has some rocks around the forefoot, but it's Italy sitting two. So, and not a really easy way to score for Norway. So we'll see what they get here. Switzerland took a 4 against Czechia. They should be in good shape to win that game now, which they really need to do. All right, the U.S. down one with 3 ends to play, and they don't have hammer. Some point they're going to need a big end or a steal. Very nice shot for Norway down there to bang one in for one. In this case, with a 1 point lead, it's a bit safer for Korea to not use their power play because it's very unlikely. If they score here, the U.S. scores back. Or put it this way: if they score here and then the U.S. doesn't score in 7, Korea likely has a very comfortable lead going into 8 without hammer, so they should win the game. If they don't score here, if they give up a steal, then they can use their power play in 7, so they know they're not going to waste it. Almost certainly. Yeah, Cortese a little heavy on her first one again. Not too good to like hit and spill off on your first rock and like split the rocks out of the forefoot when you don't have hammer in doubles. I mean, not in non-doubles either, but um, you really don't want to give the hammer team extra room to score in. Now everything the U.S. plays has less backing. The freezes are less effective if you were to make them here with those rocks further back. Good shot here from Corey Dropkin, though. Again, going a little deep. but not in a terrible spot because of that red backing. So instead of trying to get rid of it or anything, Korea is just going to draw down to it, draw down to the button, start to set up an end here. Back from the button up. Generally speaking, particularly with the hammer, you're unlikely, in doubles with all these rocks clustered together, your rocks behind the T line are unlikely to be the way that you really set up an end to score, because it's a game where there's going to be a lot of freezing on top of those rocks, which kind of shuts them out of the end. Also true to a lesser extent in four-player curling, but in four-player curling at least, you might have rocks in the back, if you have hammer, that are not right in the center. You might have something in the back corners or pretty far back on the 12-foot that isn't really useful for the other team and still could score at the end of an end. That happens less frequently in doubles, though it does, simply because you end up usually with this buildup of stones in the 4-foot and you can't get rid of everything. So those sort of ancillary rocks on the edge behind the T line rarely come into play. More often when you're using the power play, but not so much in these standard ends. All right, Corey comes up a little short and ends up leaving a second guard, like ticking off the yellow rock. Again, he does look frustrated today. Struggling with the new conditions, the new ice conditions, the papered rocks, some combination of both. But whatever it is, they're not getting the results they want right now. Big Italian crowd at the curling. Not surprising. Curling always gets big crowds at the Olympics. Just about everything gets big crowds at the Olympics, to be honest. But yeah. So the U.S. still has a draw path to sit on top of that, the stone on the button. Kind of, I think, given how late the game's getting, a kind of a big shot here for Corey Dropkin. Really want to make sure at worst we're forcing here. Ideally, you get in there for a steal, kind of force Korea to use their power play in 7, so you can think about it in 8 and know what you need in 8. And that's a beauty. Right on top. Yeah, he's a little pumped with that one. It's like, finally got one just where I want it. That was an excellent shot. For at worst a force now. Korea not going to have a good opportunity to score a multiple. Because that stone's going nowhere from the U.S. Sitting top button. But yeah, Korea's still sitting one, though. So, and with the lead, Korea won't be horribly disappointed to take a 1 here, if that's how this ends up playing out. Italy still in a dogfight here with Norway. 4-3 game, Norway with the edge. And looks like Korea's just guarding and kind of conceding that they can't get more than one, and looks like they're willing to take their one. Though the U.S. is looking at angles where they could run a red in, remove that back, the red that's the counter, leave yellow sitting one. The danger will be it may leave their resulting one pretty vulnerable here. Looks like they might be going for it. Yeah, for sure, Charles. Yeah, the fact that it like kicked the Korean stone to the back eight, and then rolled off. Yeah, it changes the end. It makes it tougher for the non-hammer team. But in this case, they were still able to. I mean, Korea still ended up with stone right on the button, um, and the U.S. was able to just freeze to it. Interesting that they're going for this because I think you could get something good out of this, but you could also leave a. Yeah, they didn't make it anyway. I was like, you could leave that Yellowstone very vulnerable. Not a big deal. They missed that one. Um, you know, Korea's almost certainly playing for just taking their one. Do they think there's something? They're kind of looking. Do they think they can somehow get everything moving? I don't think so. This might be more about throwing a rock they can learn something from. Unless they think this will run real straight for some reason. No, they're just playing something to probably learn the ice a little bit, see what happens at that weight. One red. So now 4-2 Korea, and the U.S. they will use their power play in 7 because if they don't, they're unlikely to get it back if they score. If they don't score, they're in a lot of trouble. So yeah, going to use the power play, try to set up something big here, and we'll see if they're able to do that against Korea. Another good place for me to insert an ad because we are in a commercial break. Ooh, it's windy and cold here. Um, here in Connecticut. All right, still keeping an eye on that Norway Italy game, which is pretty critical. They're coming down to their last rock. So you can see the U.S. took their power play. Again, anyone watching who may not be a curling person, um, in the power play, your rocks are moved to the corner. The hammer rock comes above the T line. That's this line that's like right across the middle of the house from front to back. So it's harder to use against you. While the non-hammer team is forced to put up a corner guard to protect your rock. So really just a all-around excellent situation for the hammer team to either score or to not give up a steal. In this case for the U.S., down 2, the situation is they're using it to try to score, obviously. Um, and with that first miss from Korea, what Korea was trying to do was this little tick shot. That's become the in vogue thing, especially when you have the lead. You play this tick shot because you're not allowed to remove rocks, but you can move them, and the one you throw can go out. So this goes out of play, hopefully. This one you push maybe into the house, and you've opened up the shot rock. They did not make that. They went right by and missed the yellow rock too. Not that they could hit the yellow one out, but yeah. Kind of watching as this end plays out. Corey TC's rock kind of just came down here, which is not ideal because they wanted they ideally would have been like right here. Rolling down to here means that Korea has the chance to throw something in a pocket and start to limit the damage. Again, this one's actually a little deeper, so it's like this. So even one in here and really limit the damage. Again, still not a horrible situation for the U.S. because all this area is open, but if Korea makes a good, can get one in there good, it will really go a long way to limiting how much the U.S. can get out of this end. Oh, Charles retracted a message. I didn't see what it was. It's okay. Korea looks a little big on this. If they put some separation, the U.S. will be more okay with this because now, yeah, they can bump it back, roll to the corner. Canada did get 3 in the 6th. So that game is not over yet. 7-5 with 2 ends to play. Estonia still in control up 2 with the hammer and with their power play here. But Canada not out of it by taking that 3. That much is for sure. They are still in play. Oh, yeah, well, it's okay to put it in the chat, though. So, U.S. Didn't quite get the angle they wanted on that Korean rock. Again, still not bad to sit second, third, fourth with hammer and nothing in the center, but sometimes we like to say they've been on the wrong side of the inch this game. Norway stole 1 in 6, so they're up 2 with 2 ends to play. Italy going to take their power play in 7. Keep an eye on this. This could be the draw that just completely mixes up the standings. If the U.S., Canada, and Italy all lose, then it's Great Britain and everyone else fighting for 3 spots again. If they all lose, the U.S. is actually still in pretty good shape because they'd maintain like a 1-game lead over Canada and Italy. But the fact that one of their losses now would be to Korea is kind of like dropping a full game against the field if everyone else is beating Korea, right? Because then the U.S. still has Italy left. Yeah. U.S. would have already played the 2 weakest by a little bit teams in Korea and the Czech Republic. Corey might be able to get rid of both of these here, both of the Korean stones. Well, I said the U.S. was kind of on the wrong side of the inch. Korea hasn't exactly buried or put these rocks exactly where they want either. Corey hopped up fast. Not throwing a ton of weight, though, actually. Oh, no, this is pretty good. This looks maybe like, or this looks like it has to curl a bit. No, it's close. Oh, and it spun off. Gee, it's so close. It actually over curled in the end. Because early on, at first it looked like they needed to curl that a bit, and it just took off on him. He's frustrated again. Not a horrible shot, though. Again, U.S. is 2-3-4. So they're going to keep putting on pressure on Korea to make shots. But, like just a couple inches of over curl there. My cat Zoe was trying to get into the action for a second there. You can get her on camera briefly. You can tell I'm petting her. You can see a little bit of Zoe there. Zoe, hey girl. All right. Okay, so that Korean rock comes up just a little short. Is only sitting fourth stone. If the U.S. can get the counter out, there is potential for a big end. The way the rocks are curling, I think Corey could do it from the center line out, but they're going to play this little chip in. It looks like actually it's unclear based on where TC's sitting now. Like she's sizing it up maybe more than anything, and they're going to discuss. Maybe they'll call their timeout here. I don't think they've called their timeout yet. I don't recall Kathy O coming out to talk to them. So you're really considering what's the best play on that red counter right now. Critical because if you can get that red counter out now, advantage US, and they're going to go for it this way. It looks like it looks from the camera when they show it from straight down the ice like it's completely buried, but anyone who's curled a bit knows that the ones on the corner are like off the center line, a little easier to get to than they look because you're kind of playing more like this. You're kind of your field is kind of a cone out from where the hack is. Corey's looking at trying to get it started. Now he's holding it for line. Must be close. Now he's carving again. Looks really close. Okay. Better. US is 1 now. Maybe. Oh, maybe the US isn't even 1. Oh, they needed to get 1 more inch of that Korean rock to move it. Hard to say who's counting, actually. But doesn't look like any potential for a big end here for the US now, which is that's a problem. Yeah. Italy potentially setting up a big end with their power play. Down 2, sitting 3, all spread out. Okay, I don't. That can't be exactly what they were hoping for from Korea. She kind of is saying, "Oops," ran it into the guard and kind of got everything a bit more guarded, not in the way as intended. Kind of just bumped their guard over and sat a second guard. This would be a time where if TC has practiced some of the big spinners, you might do it because you might want to. You could just spin one in, move that red a few inches for 3. But if it's not something you've practiced, it's not worth throwing just to throw it. I can tell you from experience. Takes quite a few before you even feel like sort of interested in throwing one in a real game. So maybe they think they can get enough curl anyway to do this, especially with Corey pushing. Nope. Well, someone got one. I think it's the U.S., but it's close. Not sure what the shot call there was. Honest, I'm not sure what they thought was going to happen with that rock. But yeah, looks like Korea one for Korea is what they agreed. Means the U.S. is down 3. U.S. will need to get 3 in the 8th to tie this and send it to an extra end. The only good thing now for them is if they get their 3, Korea won't be able to use the power play in 9. Estonia throwing their last rock against Canada here in the 7th. Estonia's up 2. And Estonia hits to go up 3 going to the 8th. But, all right, Canada's not out of the game either, down 3. Not in great shape, but certainly not completely out of the game. Switzerland puts away the Czech Republic 10-3. A must win, although all the teams that win this draw are going to be happy. I mean, outside of Korea, everyone else is going to put themselves right back in the playoff race based on the way the results are looking. And Italy got 1, maybe 2. They held on for 2, thankfully, because that makes it a tie game going to 8. Norway. Norway having the hammer with a chance to hand the Italians their 3rd loss in the 8th. So tough spot here for the U.S. It will help them that this Korean stone came up a bit short. So the U.S. can now go top 4 and sit 1-2 behind a couple guards. You know, you're still playing to that cramped center now, which is less ideal, but certainly gives you a chance to set up an end. My cat is attacking my sweatshirt. U.S. draw. I think Corey's a little deep again. Might stay top, but no, goes right behind the button. All right. Huge issue here. Going behind the button there is to the back of the button. Gives Korea the chance to just dead freeze one, and then it is extremely difficult for the U.S. to get their 3. But needs to be made. If the Koreans don't put up a good rock here, the chance for 3 or more for the U.S. is huge. If the Koreans dead freeze this, it becomes very difficult for the U.S. to score 3, though not impossible. They're always going to have a chance this early in the end with 2 rocks there because they can try to play a shot to release this Korean stone. The Korean stone needs to curl a lot, though. And if this goes behind the U.S. stones or right where it went even, where you leave, yeah, now the U.S. can throw right into that pocket. Game on. Game on in U.S. Korea here because the U.S. finally has a setup where they can potentially build a big end. Got to make their shots, but they can potentially build a big end. Italy. So if you're watching the Italy-Estonia game, or Italy-Norway game, I'm gonna pull up the strategy board real quick just to talk about something I kind of mentioned before when it comes to the power play. So we talked about how Korea tried this little tick shot, right, against the US because they were ahead when the US took the power play. They're trying to shut down and that was a great shot by Corey Dropkin too. Put another rock where it's very difficult to remove it. Could definitely set up a 3 here. But so Korea, looking to play defense against the power play, was looking to tick this rock, open up the US rock. Italy, in a tie game without Hammer against the power play, is setting up a center guard because they need to steal, right? And you got to play it just like, and their rock is just a little off the center line now. It looks like they made a slight tick, Norway, but yeah, if and it's a pretty high guard too. But you need something in the middle to hide behind to realistically feel like you're going to have a chance to steal. You can't play around this guard to try to steal because then the Hammer team has this huge area to draw to beat you. And even if that's not a 100% guarantee, the odds are very poor at this level in particular. So Italy sets up a guard, now is going around it, going a bit deep, going behind the T line, not what you want, going significantly behind the T line almost. So, all right, let's get back to the U.S. game. That Korean stone, good but not great. Because the U.S. can bang it and probably keep all or most of their rocks and lose the 2 Korean rocks. Chips it right off, leaves the U.S. sitting 3. Another outstanding shot. Wow. You might notice the U.S. a little low on time. They do still have their timeout though, so they'll be able to play without too much trouble. Yeah, U.S. left sitting 3. U.S. in complete control of the button. U.S. even rolled a little bit under the guards, which will make it a little trickier for Korea to throw a hit back. Trying to get the crowd pumped up. So Canada down 3 with Hammer, sitting 1. They're also in a spot where all the Estonian stones are behind the T line. I think Estonia was able to peel the guards though, so even a center guard without Hammer with a 3-point lead is not to your advantage in the long run if you have the time to get rid of it. As you see the Koreans now talking to their coach, because that guard's now just in the way, and if anything, it is a better stone for the team without Hammer, but also just generally guards promote scoring. So yeah, you don't want to leave those guards if you can't. I don't know that Korea ever really had a good opportunity to get rid of the center guard, but I mean, Norway tries to throw a long run back, um, gets one of the Italian stones out, but not the one they wanted to, and kind of leaves a centerish guard as well. Canada building something here, though without the center guard. Estonia's always going to have a play on their rocks. A lot of really tight eighth end action here in the 3 games, that all with important playoff consequences. If the underdogs win, we've got a big fight. Not always even underdogs, but the teams that are behind the standings wins. We've got a big fight, big sweep here from Korea. This may be a little shorter than they wanted or over curling. Okay, not bad. It's only 3rd rock, but it's in a pretty good spot. U.S. with 2 stones left and about a minute to throw them plus their timeout. So they're coming down to talk. And they pulled out the coach. There's Kathy O. Kathy Overton Clapham. Canadian legend helping them, coaching the women's team as well for the U.S. You kind of decide, do you play something on that top, the red in the top of the forefoot, or do you draw, sit 3? All right, this end is turning into an absolute disaster for Norway. Like, Italy's going to be able to make them draw the pin, basically, to win this game with a good guard here. Or make a double. I mean, you could take away both, probably, with a good guard. So Corey is going to play something here on the top 8 rock. Canada's coming down to sit 3-ish. Only 2 now. And there may be a double just remove. Yeah. Canada's sitting 2, but there's a double to remove the 2. Stones. Very good placement again from Corey. So Korea's got to make something real good here not to give up a 3. Now, the only good news for Korea is if they give up a 3, they are not out of the game because they are only down. They're up 3 right now. If Korea doesn't make something good, if Korea doesn't make something that's out counting some stuff here, though, U.S. may have a shot for 4, which is interesting. They may be looking at taking that away as opposed to trying to draw one in and risking not making a good draw and losing the game here. Estonia looking to make a double to put the game away, and they do. They get rid of everything except for 1 Canadian rock. Canada's only got 1 rock left. That's handshakes. Estonia beats Canada. Against Canada, it's third loss. Korea has plenty of time to throw this rock. They have a minute and a half left, so they're taking their time trying to figure out what's best. They've already used their timeout this end, so it's up to them to be sure about the shot they want to throw. You can talk to your coaches between shots, but only when your opponent's clock is running. All right, looks like they're going to guard the potential shot for 4, which makes a lot of sense in that you're happy to go to 9 with hammer if you have to. It looks like they've made it well enough that the U.S. is just going to be drawing the button for 3. But we'll see. No guarantee the U.S. won't try something here. And Corey TC rushing down to the other end, not because, basically with the idea of not rushing the shot. That sounds counterintuitive, but they had about 53 seconds, I think it was, on the clock. They're going to take their time when they get down there. So they go through their routine. They can throw the rock when they're ready to throw it. Norway with a final shot. I didn't see what the setup looked like. They're throwing a lot of weight. So my question, are they throwing the double or the triple to try to win the game? And Norway just off the rock. But yeah, it was a triple to try to win. They didn't get it. Italy hangs on. Italy steals in 8 to get the win here. What is Corey throwing here? They are playing for the win. They're not drawing the button. They're sweeping. Can they get it out enough? I think the U.S. got 3. Just missed the shot for 4. It is definitely 3 for the U.S. We are going to an extra end. They're looking at it. I think it's definitely 3 for the U.S. here. So Italy wins, holds on with only, still has 2 losses. Just holds off Norway. Canada loses to Estonia, so Canada does pick up a 3rd loss. U.S. picks up their 3 to tie, just misses getting 4. So they go to the extra end. There will be no power play in the extra end. We've talked about this before. Some of these teams not using their power play in 6 in close games and with hammer and ending up not getting it. So the U.S. gets to steal against the standard end with all the rocks in the center. Not bad chances here for them, given that we're playing in the middle of the sheet. And I am sticking around for one more end, and then I will run out because I have my own doubles to play at 3:30. Yeah, we can. Yeah, Italy getting away with one there. I mean, they were dead. Not they were dead to rights against the power play, and then just too many misses from Norway left them. Like, it is shocking to get in a position where you almost don't have a shot with Hammer with the power play to get one. Like, not just that, like, the other team set up a reasonable steal, but that they basically didn't have a. They had to make a triple to try to win the game. Crazy stuff. My cat is looking for things, so giving her some snacks. Make her happy. All right. Here it is. Corey and Corey going to have to get some rocks in the top of the forefoot. Freezing to the back one, not a bad result here if that's what they get. Second guard is not a disaster. This looks like it's coming right down to the top of the button, which is where you want to be to steal. On the pin's not bad either. Maybe a couple inches higher they'd rather be, but that's a great spot. Maybe I'm going to pull up a strategy board. If anyone's not watching at home, we can at least show you what's going on in the end. Let's do it this way: is a regular doubles end. Switch the colors. We'll say, yeah. So I'll swap the colors because it'll confuse me if I don't. US through right to the pin. Korea trying to play a little chip, and they do to get the rock here and a rock here. So the US again will try to draw. I think US ideally would be more like here, a little harder to chip because it's closer to the guard. Also a little harder to just bump back because you might just bump it to counting. So this is what they're looking for. Let's see what the rock is. Going to leave it out here until it's actually placed. Corey dropping, trying to get this curl a bit. Not allowed to sweep to slow down anymore. This won't be too bad. It goes a little deeper, but it will be almost a freeze. It will be hard to get rid of. Bump that one ever so slightly, not that hard. Just to there. And the yellow rock on the back. Yeah, like this, sort of. Maybe a little closer to the pin. This is what we're looking at right now. Not bad at all. Certainly gives opportunities. Just making sure there's no questions in chat. Korea coming down with their second rock now. Sweeping on off. Must be pretty happy with the weight. Now looking to carve it in a bit. Bit of a bump here. They get there's there. US rock to the back of the button. And this to about here. These are even closer than they look, like that. This one's a bit more. Yeah. So the red rock for Korea definitely counting. Corey Dropkin throwing his second rock, third rock of the end for the US. Coming the same way. I think just trying to get maybe on the inside edge of this rock to set up some good angles so that if this gets hit, the red goes by without. So hit it a little harder than he wanted to, probably, because he leaves this here. Red rock doesn't move much. The yellow rock bounces away a bit, but not bad. A little more separation because he did move him a little bit. And I would say the red rock still is counting, almost certainly. Nothing has happened so far that would make it look like the U.S. is in serious trouble. Smart move for Korea here, just to avoid this getting any more dangerous. They whack and clear the guard. So 2 rocks left each for both sides. Both sides have an extra timeout in the extra end, so they are going to discuss what the U.S. wants to do here. A couple of you could throw another guard, probably one a little tighter. You could come like anywhere in this range. You could play a very small bump and sit, and sit one. You can put one right on top. They're talking about like you put one right here, where you've set up great angles. Yeah, this rock is a little further behind the T line, but a little, like maybe like there. Yeah, so we'll see what they decide to do. Check the chat real quick. So yeah, if you can't watch the game live, this is basically the situation we're looking at. Yellow rock to be thrown for US. This rock I put further back than it actually is. It's more like in the middle of the back four. So yeah, Korea counting. This one is further over as well. So a little more like this. Even if it doesn't show, the rocks are a bit big on the strategy board, just a little bit too big. So it can make for some cramped spaces, but you should be able to get the idea here of what's going on. There are no guards anymore. Korea just peeled the guard. Other 6 rocks all in play. It looks like they are playing this at a draw weight. Whether they are just trying to freeze one in there for now, or they are moving the red rock a little to count, I don't know. So I do not have my sound on. And both shots are reasonable. I think a slight bump makes sense, but only a slight bump. Just enough to be counting, maybe. This looks a little narrow to me. I guess I'm wrong because they are sweeping for curl. Nope. Now they're back on the line. So that's, yeah, it looked a little narrow. Maybe it's just close. Does look pretty close here. Okay, maybe a little more bump than they wanted, but the way the angles are set up, pretty good. If you hit those, so the red rock comes back to like here. Yellow rock, yeah, red rock back to like here. So we've got there, there. Red is third, yellow fourth. And these are a bit more lined up. They're both. So there's no way if somehow you blasted everything, yellow's 1, because you're always gonna lose this red. It's not easy to lose everything either. You may very likely leave this yellow too if you try to double. Not that you definitely will, but losing both, you probably have to maybe come across. But then maybe, yeah, hard to say. You might leave this. You might like start moving everything, but leave this yellow, here-ish. Definitely makeable to remove a lot of rocks here, which is what they're going to try to do. If you don't make this good, US is in a great spot to steal. If you make it real good, you're going to leave Korea with a good chance to hold on. Yeah, Korea removes 5 rocks. In the end, is what happens here. Korea moves nearly everything. All those go. This is gone. This rock moved very slightly. This rock was the only one that wasn't touched. It's a little further over. And US has about a minute to think about this shot. A couple options. I mean, you could just try to freeze. You'd want to freeze a little bit on the inside so that hit would perhaps jam. But then you still give them, or if you dead freeze, if you dead froze, you'd be leaving them the pin because these rocks are a little too big. I think maybe a better option, and maybe what they're trying to do, is put something like right here where the hit doesn't count. It's a relatively long double. Maybe even overlap a little where you could easily jam the double. This one looks outside. This one's got to curl a bit, whatever it's going to do. They may be playing this freeze, actually. This might be what they went for. Ugh, just went deep. Unfortunate that one went deep. If they were playing this, instead they got this. The only upside is there's really no double because this would jam onto there. I mean, it'd be silly. All right, so there's actually a little space. So definitely no double. So Korea can either draw or hit. They do have to nose it to hit for one. This one, I believe, we'll have to take a look. It looks like the second counter. Now I'm pretty actually sure it is. Second counter, you do have an open hit or a draw. And they can consider either one. I mean, doubles a lot of the time here. This is a little further back. And this is a little further over, but there is a hole. Would not be surprised to see him just throw the draw. That's pretty typical here for doubles. Your only risk is that your adrenaline, you go a little big here. Line looks pretty good, though. If anything, it might be over curling a little. If it's big and it over curls, no, it's on the note. It's on it. Very good shot. Korea gets the win over the U.S. Great win for Korea. Tough loss for the U.S. here. The final shot was just kind of a heavy draw. Bumped it a little bit. Stuck it right there for the win. Yeah, U.S. just came up a shot or two short. Played pretty well, but just missed a shot for 4 and 8. Only need to move it a few more inches. U.S. still not in terrible shape by any means. Not a game they wanted to lose, but given that they already have wins against, a win against Canada, not bad. Not bad position to be in at 4 and 2, but not nearly as good as when they started the day 4 and 0. That is for sure. So that about wraps it up. Tomorrow we can take a real quick look here. Let's take a real quick look at see if they've updated the standings. Looks like they have. See if anyone's updated the standings on the. Looks like they are completely up to date, so I can pull that up. There we've got Great Britain at 7-0, obviously and clearly and they've already beaten the U.S. They haven't played Italy yet, so they have not clinched the 1 seed. But if they win either game, if they just beat Italy, in fact, they will clinch the 1 seed. Or if Italy loses a game, they will clinch the 1 seed. They have the tiebreaker over the U.S., of course, because of head-to-head. U.S. and Italy at 4 and 2. The U.S.-Italy head-to-head game, which is not until the final draw, which I will look at what time that is in a second here, becomes pretty critical because whoever has the head-to-head between them has a clear edge. Sweden right now sitting in the 4 spot. They are 4 and 3. They have not played Canada yet. They have played. Have they played? They did beat Switzerland head-to-head, which is good for them because Switzerland also has 3 losses. Canada has 3 losses. Canada's has 3 losses, but it's already played Great Britain, the U.S., and Italy. So on the other hand, they have head-to-head games. They have huge head-to-head games against Sweden and Switzerland. Very likely, looking at this now, or at least somewhat likely, that someone with 4 losses could make the round robin. if Sweden, Switzerland, or Canada, if any of them go undefeated the rest of the way, that could hold it at 3 losses. But remember, either the United States or Italy is going to pick up a third loss when they play each other. Italy still has to play Great Britain as well. U.S. has to play Sweden and Estonia, which are not easy games. So, yeah, if you're Norway or Estonia with 4 losses, you have to feel like if you win out, you have every chance of still fighting for a playoff spot. Notable that both Norway and Estonia have wins over Sweden. So they have a tiebreaker edge there if Sweden loses a game. So a lot to play for still here. Yeah. This turned from what looked to be like a runaway for the top 4 at one point to, well, at least it's probably a runaway for Great Britain and the U.S. to, all right, Great Britain's gone. Everyone else is still fighting for a playoff spot. The one thing U.S. and Italy have is that they do have, they both have wins against Switzerland, sorry. The U.S. has a head-to-head win over Canada, so they effectively have like a game and a half lead over Canada. And the U.S. and Italy whoever wins their head-to-head game will have a huge edge there as well. If we scroll down here to your draws tomorrow, we can look really quick. Overnight, if you watch, you have draw 10. That's going to be Norway playing Czech Republic. Big game. Norway has to win that. Estonia, South Korea. Estonia has to win that. So those 2 games won't clarify much, except Norway and Estonia need to win to stay around at 4 losses. They cannot afford upset losses there. So if you don't want to get up for that, early morning draw in the U.S. or super late draw, maybe if you're on the West Coast in the U.S. or Canada, you don't have to. Your teams aren't playing, but that doesn't mean the end they won't matter. Because they could clarify how many teams are still in it and how scared the 3-loss teams have to be to lose a game. I think I have the second draw up there good now. Yes, I do. The morning draw, like the 8:35 Sunday morning draw, if you're in Eastern time. The afternoon draw if you're in Italy or in Europe. Canada, Sweden, enormous game with both teams already having 3 losses. Great Britain, Switzerland, huge for Switzerland. If Switzerland could pull off what would be an upset there, huge for them to stay around in the playoff race and stay in good position on 3 losses. U.S. Estonia, U.S. has to bounce back with a win at this point. Beating Estonia would be a great way to kind of right the ship, get a huge 5th win, keep them kind of their heads above water, because as long as they keep winning, the U.S. still completely controls their destiny. Obviously, if they keep winning, they only have 2 losses. They would be in a playoff spot right now, in a tiebreaker spot. Italy, Czech Republic. Italy can't afford to lose that game. That would be a bad loss for them. But Italy, Czech Republic's out of things. But Italy should win that game. But important that they do. Finally, the 1 o'clock draw tomorrow, and while I did not get a big audience for this game, depending on how things shake out, it may be very well be worth running one and watching these games with people live, because all 4 games will likely still have playoff implications. Italy, Great Britain will have playoff implications. Italy, Great Britain, hugely important for Italy. Especially if somehow they pick up another loss to like the Czech Republic. But even if they don't, Italy doesn't really want to pick up a 3rd loss and risk falling to 4 losses later. U.S., Sweden, both of those teams right in the heat of the playoffs race. U.S. will want to win that either way, but if the U.S. loses to Estonia and falls to 3 losses, that head-to-head game between the U.S. and Sweden becomes massive. Norway, Switzerland, another game where both teams are probably going to have to win it to stick around. Canada, South Korea. Canada can't have what happened to the U.S. happen to them here. They can't lose a game to South Korea and pick up a 4th loss there with other key games going on. And while this is a day and a half out, let's look at that final draw just to see the games that might. This will be overnight. This might be if teams are fighting for playoff spots. If your country has not clinched a playoff spot going in the last draw, You may be waking up really early or staying up really, really late to watch these games. The key ones here: Switzerland, Canada could be huge. Italy, US will almost certainly be huge. And Norway and Estonia, if they can win out the rest of the way, have the weakest two teams to play, South Korea and Czech Republic. Both teams, Norway and Estonia, if they are in striking distance going to that last draw, could pick up another win very easily and be in the playoff hunt. So we've got a ton going on in these last few draws. What looked like it might not be a very exciting round robin towards the end now looks like every game is critical. Outside of Czech Republic and South Korea, everyone's still in this. And yeah, we'll see how this goes over the next day or so. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of content about the Olympics. There's a lot of older strategic content up, and I'll probably be adding more soon. So lots to watch there. Yeah, maybe see you tomorrow for a stream. Certainly for the medal rounds, when we get into those, we'll be doing some streams and some watch-alongs. So if there's any questions in chat, I'll take a look. Yep, Charles, see you on the ice this week. Our Thursday team, we play in a Thursday league together. Yeah, anything else? Nope, nothing else. Looks like we're good. So let's call it a stream, and yeah, we'll be back maybe tomorrow and definitely for the medal rounds. Take care, everyone, and good curling.